Barbara and Rasa, we've just heard from you, and I will come back to you in a moment. But Susan, you're new to the stage, so can I just introduce you? Susan, you have a lot of experience, both as a business strategist, as an entrepreneur. You've been involved in several very successful startups, some with extremely successful exits, like PayPal, for instance. And you are now an advocate for inclusivity and diversity, and you work as a mentor. And in Symantec, you are in charge of diversity, inclusion, and equity. This is something that Ciara Beth Griffin pointed out on the stage yesterday. We use those terms, diversity and inclusion, a lot. We tend to lump them together, but they're quite different. So can you give us an example of diversity and inclusion from your line of work, and how you make that happen?
Absolutely. And good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. I did like her example yesterday. There is a popular meme across the internet that diversity is being invited to the party, yet inclusion is being asked to dance. A third one of those is the sense of belonging. And belonging is when you know all the songs. So that's a nice way that they've introduced that. But when we look at it from a workplace perspective, diversity is the what. It's the makeup of the organization. Not only our physical characteristics, but our experiences, our perspectives, what we bring to the table. Inclusion is the how. It's how do we integrate and how do we show up? How do we understand our impact within our organizations, how we interact with each other? Equity was something we added to the Symantec mission recently, and it's really the premise that we all start from a different place, and that each of us needs a separate set of tools, support, and resources to bring our full selves to work. So we really bring in diversity, inclusion, and equity for a full suite of the workplace environment that we strive for.
Great. Barbara, the world of engineering in particular suffers from a lack of diversity. I don't think that's any huge secret. I suppose not only gender diversity, but how do you build a workplace with a culture that welcomes all kinds of diversity? So people from different backgrounds, people who think in different ways. How do you go about that?
I think there's no one fast silver bullet that says here's how you do it, because if that were the case, we'd all be doing it. But I think there's a lot to be said for the way I think about diversity, and the way we think about it in HubSpot is that it essentially is a journey, but it's never done. So the first part of the journey will be sort of awareness, then there's education, and they're pivotal to actually bringing, I suppose, all the employees to a certain realization in terms of how their behaviors may impact. And also in the awareness phase, it's really about understanding, well, do we have a problem? And what does it feel like to be a minority within the industry? And actually, where do I fit in here if I'm not a minority? What part can I play? So I think that awareness and then the educational piece is vitally important. I think some of the things that we have tried and actually have worked really well in HubSpot is we've created what we call employee resource groups. So they're essentially a safe space for a particular group of people. I won't say a minority, but a group of people that they can share ideas, they can share issues, problems, they can support each other. And they've worked hugely well. Now, within a resource group, there's events, there's programming, there's content, there's shared think space. There's a lot in there, but we have LGBTQ, we have ParentSpot, we have people of color, and there's one other, which ParentSpot. So, or there's one other one, it escapes me right now, but we have lots of those, and we actually have little mini ones as well, like ElderSpot as an example, so people who are looking after elderly parents. I think that awareness and education piece is critical. I think if you can get everybody moving along that journey, and everybody's going to be in a different place based on their own personal life experience, I think that's the pivotal, it's key.
Great. You mentioned elder there. Now this brings me to, I'm asking for a friend here, but you spoke a lot about bringing kind of young people, millennials and Generation Z into the workforce. What about those of us who've maybe been in the workforce for a while and experienced a lot of changes, have a lot of experience? How can my friend position herself to make sure that she's ready for what the coming changes in the world of work?
I think I'd get on great with your friend, actually. But for me, I think, and this was me a couple of years ago before I joined HubSpot. Like, I'm closer to 50 than I am to 40. So it was genuinely, oh my goodness, how do I think about going into a company where the age profile is so much younger? And actually, I think it's all about your mindset. I think if you have an open mindset and you still have that curiosity to learn, I think that is the most important thing. I was incredibly lucky. My father-in-law, he passed away about 2 years ago, but he was 95 when he died. And literally, he was the most incredible man, the largest sense of curiosity I've ever seen in my whole entire life. When he was 93, we bought him an iPad for Christmas, and he absolutely loved it. And anybody that would come into the house, he had to show them the iPad. And that's what I mean about, like, it doesn't matter what age you are, as long as you have that open-mindedness and that sense of curiosity and a drive or strive to keep learning, essentially.
Keep learning and keep up with the pace of change,
Yeah.
I suppose. Rasa, you spoke very eloquently there about the need to build a space for people to work. And this has changed massively over the years. We now have, it's routine to be working on, maybe you're on a team where other people in that team are in different parts of the world, or maybe there are spaces where you can go and work in the same place as someone, but you're working on very different things. What's the kind of the magic ingredient to getting it all working?
Oh, I think I wish we knew it, if there was one magic ingredient, but I think there's like a huge mix of different factors that are really important, and I actually see also increasing importance of personalization, because it's all about creating, this personal, unique experience, and we all have similar needs and interests, but at the same time, they are very different. So I think that first of all, the space has to be as flexible as possible and modular, because we can then all use it in a way we want it, and we can literally live the space. So I also see this increased challenge of like being remote teams or distributed teams when we work across different time zones, and then I see those teams sitting in the room 2 o'clock at night, having chats, calls, and they have those cameras and mics following them in the room. I mean, it's fine. We are not going to avoid that, and I think it's going to increase even more. But the space they're doing this have to have, first of all, different areas to relax, to work, to have chats. So it has to give you different stimulus. Otherwise, your brain never gets to rest.
Yes. No, absolutely. We have to factor in human biology into this. I had the experience a couple of weeks ago. I was in San Francisco. I needed to get on a conference call with people who were in the Philippines and people who were in Ireland. Somebody had to get up at 1 in the morning, and it turned out to be me. So I have personal experience of that, and it is tough if you would have to do that routinely. By the way, if you haven't already checked out Talent Garden in DCU Alpha, I would definitely recommend doing that. And you can see the kind of space that Rasa has been talking about. I suppose that notion of being in different spaces, you each work in different parts of the world or various parts of the world. Can you talk to me about the importance of culture and the difference that makes?
Sure, I'll get started. So I work in San Francisco, and it's interesting because part of the luxury of my job is I do get to travel internationally. I was in Singapore 4 weeks ago, London earlier this week, and now Dublin. And it is the opportunity to meet and work across cultures that gives us that strength. I do believe that a cultural competency is the new competency we need to look for when it comes to innovation and business growth. So we do look at that. 50% of Symantec's employees are outside the US, so that gives us a great advantage from my perspective. There are cultures there are cultures that are still struggling with the women, what women's roles are in the workplace or at home. And so we work with our local offices on creating programs. India, for example, a lot of women still are encouraged to take care of the children, and they need a bit more flexible workplace. And we thought about introducing a women's or a mother's flexible program in the India office. We had a number of single fathers come to us saying, hey, what about us? And they're absolutely right. So we renamed it from a mother's program to a parent's program. And that's more gender neutral, it's more inclusive, and it really considers that all of us, no matter what our identity is, might have different needs in order to be successful at work. So we really keep our eye on what's happening locally in each of our organizations.
Great. Barbara?
Yeah, I think culture is, obviously is a huge part of my talk. I think it's vitally important. I think it helps individuals within a company if they know what the company stands for, though. So again, I mentioned earlier that we should, as companies, we should write it down. That sounds so basic, but actually it really grounds the employees to know that, okay, well, this behavior is not acceptable and this behavior is expected. And I think that culture happens whether you like it or not. So you may as well define the culture that all your employees can aspire to, and that genuinely within your business organization, then you as a business, you can measure yourself towards some of those as well. So I think a really, really important factor is actually determining what is the culture of our organization. And I think not enough companies do that.
Rasa, would you agree?
Yeah, this is a big topic, and we've been looking into that because it's a very important factor about like how we feel coming all together. And I think what we realized that culture, especially when you have a European community, it has to have some like common norms, rules, and values that are very much communicated and are put as a common layer for how we behave and how we use the things and how we interact with each other. And that has to be communicated all the time and embraced. And I think that we have to embrace the differences, and then we have to celebrate very much the similarities, because that's something that brings us together.
Yeah, it's getting the balance right, isn't it? And finally, I suppose, because we're running out of time, I could sit here and talk to you all day about it. Maybe if you could just tell me very briefly what you would ideally like to happen in the world of work in the next 5 to 10 years, and how we in the room can get ready for that, Rasa?
Wow, that's a big one. Perhaps what I would like to see, and I believe that we'll be seeing that in the world of future of work, where we have those like on-demand locations and the shops for environment, for places, for skills, so we can obtain anything we need to grow and be better really fast without having a big effort in searching and accessing it.
Great. Thank you.
I think what I'd love to see in the next 10 years, and I think it's going to start happening, you can see a movement towards it, is to have more human-centered organizations. So I think that, it goes without saying that companies become successful on the strength of the employees that they have. I think that if companies can focus on the human element, so whether it's flexible working or, different types of supports that they need to implement to support their humans within their organization, I think that's vitally important. So I'd love to see in the next 10 years that it's not just an exception to see a company that really, really, really supports and values and puts a huge amount of effort into the human element, that all companies would be like that.
Look forward to that.
And I like that a lot. I think I tend to go technology. I tend to go, how do we build language translation into our business communications tools? How can we have language translation in real time through email, messaging applications, WebEx, for example, just so as a global company, I can comfortably and quickly interact with my colleagues around the world.
And just on the note of culture there, aren't there sometimes nuances with those?
There are nuances, so there needs to have a human touch.
Yes,
the humans still need to be in there. Good stuff. Well, on that note, thank you so much to our panelists, to Rasa, to Barbara, to Susan, for your insights in the world of work. Thank you.